The AFC North features players like Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, and Juju Smith-Schuster, and because of these four players, this division is always being talked about. 3 Heisman winners that are starting quarterbacks, don't worry, I didn't forget about RG3, plus one of the most entertaining football players off the field, adds up to a lot of discussion amongst fans. However, there are over 200 more players in this division, with some obviously having more talent than others. But there are a few guys in this division that are flying under the radar and will break out in 2020. Now, this marks the 5th division of breakout players for this series we have going, and we're going to talk about some players today that are going to produce in 2020. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. And we start today's video off with Diontae Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. In Diontae's rookie season, he made quite the impact, as he had nearly 60 catches for 680 yards and 5 touchdowns, and finished second on the team in receiving yards to James Washington. Now, with Ben being back and healthy this year, and the same goes for Juju too, Diontae is in a good position to break out. Just a few years ago, we saw Juju Smith-Schuster go for over 1,400 yards as the number 2 receiver in this offense, while the number 1 receiver went for over 100 catches, nearly 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns in his own right, that of course being Antonio Brown. Now, I don't think Diontae will burst onto the scene the way Juju did in 2018 and have a 1,400 yard year, but with a healthy Ben, he very easily could go for over 1,000. Juju is now the veteran of the receivers room, which is crazy because he won't turn 24 until late November, but with the mentorship of him and Ben telling him where he wants to go on X route or Y route, culminates in Diontae having a big second season. What a lot of people seem to forget is just 2 years ago, Ben led the NFL in passing yards, so it's not like he has a horrendous player throwing him the ball. Ben is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he has thrown passes to Hines Ward, to Santonio Holmes, to AB, to Juju, and now Diontae Johnson. Diontae had a stellar rookie season last year with below average quarterback play, and in the final 4 games of the year, he racked up 257 yards and 2 touchdowns. And while you may think that's not great, a full 16-game season translates to 92 catches for 1,028 yards and 8 touchdowns, with quarterbacks clearly less talented and accomplished than Big Ben. I don't think a 1,400-yard outburst for Diontae is coming, but I definitely think he could have 65 to 70 catches for 1,100 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns in 2020. And next is Grant Delpit, a safety of the Cleveland Browns. Delpit had an unusual draft process, as a year ago this time, he had scouts savoring at what he could be as a pro, as there was legitimate top 5 to 10 buzz around him, and for good reason. He was a 6'2 safety that could cover, and at a time was thought he could be a tight end eliminator. However, in 2019 he wasn't the player he was in 2018, and scouts and front offices took notice, and due to this he fell a bit in the draft. Now you may be wondering, how could he have fell off if he was an All-American, and that's a completely plausible thought, but Delpit largely fell to the second round due to questions surrounding his tackling form. Now, I do think Delpit can break out and be a good player for the Browns in 2020 for a few reasons. He will be just 22 years old this fall and has a great opportunity to learn every day in practice from big-name players like Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, and Nick Chubb. Not only that, but Delpit will get to see every day how 2 good receivers get their work in and how they attack defenses. The difference in talent level at the NFL, and especially in skill positions between benchwarmers and stars, really isn't that much. Now, there is a huge difference between Julio Jones and a 5'8", 165-pound receiver, but for an average 6-foot-tall corner, there's really not a huge difference. Instincts, reaction time, and quick decision-making are what separates the good from the elite, and if Delpit learns early on what to look for in Odell and Jarvis when they're making a cut, whether it's in or out, and how he can learn to make a play on that as a safety. The Browns secondary is honestly solid, as it has players like Denzel Ward, Carl Joseph, and another young player they hope breaks out in Greedy Williams. There are far worse secondaries, and with all of these players having NFL experience, they will help Delpit's progression. He plays in a division with Joe Burrow and Ben Roethlisberger, and Joe will have an adjustment period, and Ben isn't afraid to take risks, so very quietly, Delpit could rack up the interceptions. With the help he'll receive from teammates, the good competition he will face every day in practice, and facing quarterbacks that simply will throw interceptions, Delpit will break out in 2020. And next is Ravens receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown. Hollywood is in a great position to break out, and if he doesn't this year, then he most certainly will in 2021. He had a solid solid rookie season in which he had 46 catches for nearly 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. He can break out in 2020 for a few reasons. There was a report or news update, if you will, about him that came out a few weeks ago that said he finished last year at 157 pounds, which I don't have to tell you guys, but that is insanely light for an NFL player. Now though, Hollywood is apparently up to 180 pounds, and with the increase in weight, he will be bigger and stronger and will have improved as a football player. His chemistry will have also improved with MVP quarterback Lamar Jackson, who should again have a good year throwing the football. In 2019, Marquise played in 70% of the snaps in just 4 games and still managed respectable numbers. Now, I think it's fair to say he will be the number 1 receiver on that offense, and between him, Mark Andrews, Lamar of course, and all of the running backs they have between Ingram, JK, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill, there will be games where Hollywood doesn't get his number called and simply doesn't produce. It's just a part of the game when there's that many good options to throw the ball to. With how fast and elusive he is with the ball in his hands though, offensive coordinator Greg Roman will want to get him the ball, as especially with the Ravens offense, defenses have to be worried about speed at all times. It will be incredibly difficult to not only keep Lamar contained in the pocket, but also have to worry about Hollywood burning the defense over the top, as this doesn't really get talked about too often it seems, but Lamar has one of the strongest arms in the game. Now, I'm not saying he's Mahomes or Josh Allen can throw at 80 yards, but some of the throws he makes seem so effortless, and that is one part of Lamar's game that truly is underrated, which in turn only benefits Hollywood. Now, I have nothing to back this up other than game speed, but at 5'9", 165 pounds during the draft process, I do think Hollywood would have ran in the low 4.3s, and we all know that's lightning quick. Hollywood will break out in 2020 and go for over 1,000 yards if he's healthy because of the natural improvement that I'm confident he's made between 2019 and 2020, the 20 pounds of muscle he added on this offseason, and because of how good his quarterback play truly is. And the final player for today's video is Sam Hubbard of the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of people simply don't know who Sam is because he played for such a lackluster team last year, and people really only saw the Bengals on the bad end of highlight plays like the Lamar Jackson run, for example. But Sam had a sneaky good season as he had 8.5 sacks in his first full year starting and is just 25 years old. He had 10 tackles for a loss, forced a fumble, and had a few pass deflections as well. He can break out this year and become a 12 or even 13 sack player, as this team can really only go up. They created just 16 turnovers last year as a defense and gave up an awful 6.1 yards per play, and when a team goes 2-14, it's not surprising they lose big in a lot of games. And now I ask, what do teams do when they have big leads? They of course run the football, so not surprisingly, the Bengals had the ball ran on them the most in the NFL and gave up the most rushing yards too. So for Sam to have 8.5 sacks with all of this happening in 2019, I would say that is a pretty dang good year for a young pass rusher. With their offense hopefully keeping them in more games this year, this will cause opposing teams to throw the ball more, which in turn gives Hubbard more chances for quarterback hits and sacks. So with his own progression, the Bengals not being as dreadful this year as they were last, and more opportunity, Sam will have at least 10 sacks if he stays healthy in 2020. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. I appreciate all the support, guys. And if you ever have a video suggestion, let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.